What it is, cucks, it's your boy, and the event, the worst event, I should say, maybe ever, has just ended. So it's now time for us to go over it segment by segment. That rhymed inadvertently, but it is what it is. Now let's get to it, all right? I didn't like this event at all, primarily for one reason, and one reason only. And that is, there were too many commercials. The hater tuned in a little bit late, but I'm told by a friend that basically I missed nothing. All that happened were commercials after commercials after commercials. I tune in, we're in the middle of the tag team match. CM Punk is doing nothing, Seth Rollins is doing nothing, nobody's doing nothing, right? Eventually, a few moments later, a fat creature appears and just completely plows he plows CM Punk. I wasn't sure if it was him or the balding Sami Zayn. So he just plows through CM Punk on the barricade, and that's the end of that. In the ring, Sami Zayn is distracted by Paul Heyman, turns around, gets super speared, which is just another spear, right? Then we realize that the fat beast, I realized this immediately, was Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed joins Rollins, Heyman, and Braun Breaker to form a faction. Once again, Lackey Reed, motherfuckers, Lackey Reed. Now, this was weird because Bronson Reed kind of tried to make a name for himself by destroying Seth Rollins to no avail, right? Because now he's just joining him as his subordinate. Now, that's fine. You need like a jobber in this. You know, Braun Breaker is going to be the one that gets the rub. Bronson Reed is going to then end up being a jobber again. I think he's going to end up being a jobber during this faction as well. Like, nobody really cares about him. But, things could be worse, right? Of all of the other Islanders that have joined recently, obviously Bronson Reed is the most interesting of them all. He looks like he could kill you. He has a fun finisher, the tsunami, you know what I mean? And I really like the way he does it. I've said this before, where he puts one foot on the top rope and then one foot in the middle rope and then just kind of like springs off the foot on the top rope instead of putting both feet on the top rope. I don't know, it just adds a little bit of like quickness to it. I really enjoy it. I like Bronson Reed for all things that he is, right? He's decent, you know what I mean? I don't have anything against him, so I'm cool with him coming back. Also, for better or for worse, this was a moment. When I say moment, I don't mean like, a moment in the sense that it was a big moment or a good moment, but it was a moment, right? Something happened that nobody saw coming. Not that it mattered that it happened or not, right? That was kind of the story of this event. The things that happened, nobody cared about, but whatever, right? Something happened. I think it was necessary to make this match somewhat palpable, because otherwise it's a complete waste of time. Obviously, the new and hot faction of Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker are going to beat a team that involves Sami Zayn, even if the other guy is CM Cut. Sami Zayn is just a perennial jobber. He's an evergreen jobber. This guy's always there and he's always jobbing. So that was a complete waste of time. Then about 10 years go by, and it's time for Chelsea versus Zelina Vega. Zelina Vega had her hair colored like the flag. I'm not sure if it was the US flag or the Puerto Rican flag. Either way, I'd like to wipe my ass with her hair and turn it back to the color brown. You know what I'm saying? Have normal hair. It would suit her so much better. Anyways, the match is a complete botch fest. The size discrepancy cannot be ignored to the point where Michael Cole says Chelsea's a lot taller than Zelina Vega. Then, as the match progresses into absolute nothingness, this meaningless title becomes even more meaningless when Zelina Vega has Chelsea Green like propped up on the ropes in the 619 position, right? She then proceeds to do the absolute worst 619 of all time. First of all, it's disrespectful to just steal the finishing move of a legend. Second of all, it's disrespectful to do it while the legend is still in the company and while he was part of the same group that she was part of, right? Even though she had absolutely no impact in LWO. LWO is just like, let's put all the Latino wrestlers that have nothing to do with Rey Mysterio and hope that they get over by osmosis. It's obviously not working, but it is a career highlight for these jobbers. So anyways, Zelina eventually does a top rope code red and wins. Great. The botch 619 was so bad, she basically just stops and then just does like a kick while she's hanging out in the tiger feint kick position. You know what I mean? It was really, really poorly executed. Zelina Vega should be released. She's not athletic enough to be a wrestler. It's really that simple. You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't have the correct attributes to do this job correctly and entertain us. She's not good at it, and I don't really care. After this, we get another 10 years of commercials. And the worst part is, I don't know if the commercials are the same because I was watching on Peacock, but there was like several John Cena commercials, you know? It's like a Kia or like a Ford, some car brand, some commercial where it's just, you can hear John Cena's voice. It really destroys the event because Cena's a bad guy, and these are like commercials that he did in his face character, you know, where he talks like this. He says, "Oh, please get the new Ford." And I go, "Fuck yourself," you know what I mean? So another 10 years go by with commercials. Then we go to Michael Cole, who reads us more commercials, and then we get a commercial video package of Cena versus R-Truth. Then we get more commercials. It's a complete waste of time. If I knew that this was going to be structured like this, I mean, I should have known, but I forgot. I never would have watched it. I'm not even joking. Not even for the channel. You know, I would have watched it tomorrow or something and skipped all this bull, but I couldn't because I watched it live for all you fucks. So anyways, that went down. Eventually, Cena comes out. He gets introduced by Lillian Garcia. Then R-Truth comes out, you know, with Cena's music. Ron Cena, it says on his shirt, and it's just like a picture of him instead of John Cena. The match was not what I expected. I thought this was going to be a brutalist match where John Cena just destroys R-Truth, and that's not really what it was. You know, and I thought Cody Rhodes would make the save. I was half right, as we're going to see later, but basically, Cena does his comeback, but in this new format, in this slow and steady format, so good for him. Then R-Truth does it regularly. He hits the 5-knuckle shuffle. They wrestle for a little longer. Cena then does something tricky. I think he low blows him, I forget. Picks him up, AA, 1, 2, 3. Then he belts him in the head like he's prone to do, you know what I mean? And that's it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. After this, we've got like a little backstage interaction with Cena and Jey Uso, where Cena says, if Logan Paul wins, you know what I mean? This will ruin wrestling, which really is a stupid thing to do. But anyways, Jey Uso doesn't say anything, and then they move on. But before we get to that match, we got a bunch of other shit going on, right? First, they go to the crowd, and they show some woman nobody knows, and then they show Tatanka, which was pretty cool. Then Jesse Ventura is now on commentary, you know? Jesse Ventura talks about how he was on commentary back in the day, did a match, and went back to commentary, a feat that was neatly duplicated by Pat McAfee very recently, except Jesse points out that Pat McAfee lost the match. I like Jesse. I always have, you know. He's a fun time, but he's kind of annoying too, you know what I mean? And this idea that like bringing him is wise has its pros and its cons. For the WWE, I believe it's mostly cons, but for the fans, there's definitely some pros in there, you know? Like, he didn't talk about how I joined the Navy, you know what I mean? He didn't say all that, right? I was in the service, you know? Like, nobody wants to hear that shit, you know what I mean? I was on the inside, brother, you know? But anyways, like, Jesse Ventura, he does all these things, and then he basically says, I respect Pat McAfee. This monologue of Jesse Ventura's goes on so long that it overlaps with Lillian Garcia's introduction of Drew McIntyre, which I find to be disrespectful. Like, we're not here to listen to Jesse Ventura. I mean, I'd prefer to listen to him than the introduction of Drew McIntyre, but I don't think I speak for most people, you know what I mean? In this case, at least. Anyways, after this, Priest comes out dressed like a Wendigo. Look it up, motherfucks. He dresses up as a Wendigo. Afterwards, we have the match. The match was short because this is like a hybrid PLE/TV scenario, right? So in order to fit in all the commercials that they normally would fit into a PLE, as well as the commercials they would normally fit into an episode of Raw, they have to cut out a lot of things, including match time. The match was quick, but it was fine. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that match being fast. It might not be what people are used to in the context of PLEs, but I personally thought it was just fine. So basically, what happens is they hit each other's finishers, or their own finishers. Then Drew does the South of Heaven, and then sets up Priest for the Claymore in the corner with the chair. The Claymore sandwich, if you will. This time, Damian Priest gets out of the way, and Drew McIntyre kicks the chair, and then he sells it like he just got his leg broken. This is a completely normal thing. If you kick a chair, it's not going to hurt if you're wearing boots. But anyways, he does. This is when Damian Priest takes control. He took over, you know what I'm saying, and went to town on Drew McIntyre. I thought that was perfectly fine. He starts beating the shit out of him. He does the Undertaker chair spot where he puts it in Drew's throat and then smashes the chair like on its legs. It was fine. You know what I mean? After that, he pulls an Edge out of his hat and hits Drew McIntyre with a one-man concerto, which they say Edge invented. In fact, I believe the one-man concerto was invented by my favorite wrestler, Christian. But that's neither here nor there. I think the first time they did that was when Christian did it to Edge. But, it is what it is. He does the concerto. Good to see that the concerto is still around as a move. It's a cool idea, so that's fine. And then basically, what's his face? Damian Priest tells the referee to unlock the cage door, and he starts walking out of the cage. Now, here's the thing about this, right? He stops at the bottom step of the steps, so technically he's not out yet because both feet must touch the ground. And then there's this idea that he's going to go back and just beat the shit out of Drew McIntyre more, but he walks out, right? And this, to me, kind of presented like the end of this feud, where it's like, all right, I'm done with you. You know what I mean? Like, we're done. Like, Damian Priest had the opportunity to go back and keep beating his ass, but now he's like, all right, we're finished, man. Like, I beat you. I'm walking out. I'm walking away. I'm letting you live, basically, right? So Drew McIntyre loses yet another feud. I don't care that he won like the first 7 matches. He lost the last one. Hopefully this is the last one. So expect not to see Drew McIntyre for 3 weeks and then him to show up in a hoodie again, as Wade Barrett tells us that I've never seen this version of Drew McIntyre before. That's what you're going to see, and that's what you're going to get, and you're all going to pretend that it's a good idea. So anyways, the problem with him walking out was Jesse Ventura. But as they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. In this case, the hater's treasure. I really enjoyed the burial job that Jesse Ventura performed, not necessarily on Damian Priest, but more so on the methodology of winning a cage match by just leaving through the door, right? It's a very, very stupid idea, and it's an idea that even when it was introduced in like 2005, because before then, that was not even a way to do it. You had to like escape the cage, right? Most of the time, you had to escape the cage. It wasn't pinfall and escape the cage. It was you must escape the cage. Then eventually they added the pinfall stipulation, and then they added the door stipulation, so fat wrestlers and unathletic wrestlers could escape, but it was never used, right? It was just never used. It was an option, but every time the match would end either with like a pinfall, or it would end with some like top of the cage fight and someone throws the other person off and then they go down the cage, right? This time, and it's happened before, I'm not saying this is the first time, Priest just walks out. And Jesse Ventura's like, I can't believe this. Like, what the hell was that? Why didn't he call a limousine to come get him while he was at it? It was a really interesting take on it. It's something that we all know is bullshit. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to see it like end like that, right? Nobody wants a cage match to, especially a good one. This wasn't a good one, but it was an okay one. Nobody wants to see it end with someone just walking away, right? You don't want to end a fight to end like that at all, right? You want it to end decisively. Now, the argument could be made that it was decisive, This was presented as a grudge match, and Damian Priest was okay with just ending the grudge here. I don't know why Drew McIntyre would be okay with this, but presumably he will be. Hopefully this fucking feud ends. I don't see this happening again. Actually, I completely do see it happening. I can completely see this continuing on SmackDown like nothing else happened, but I'm hoping that that's not the way it goes down. So I understand why they did the walk-away finish, but I also sympathize and agree largely with Jesse Ventura's take that this is an unacceptable way to finish what essentially is a pay-per-view match, But who am I to judge? I'm not Triple H. I'm not Lee Fitting. So there you have it, right? After this, it's time for the main event. Uso versus Logan. There's about 10 minutes left in the show, so this is going to go quick, right? Maybe there's like 15, 20 minutes at this point, but then they have the entrances and then they have a commercial again. So there you have it, More commercials go down and the match starts. The match can barely get going before Cena comes and interferes, right? Turns out Cena was in fact saying something meaningful when he told Jey Uso that he wants to ruin wrestling and that it would be fun if Logan Paul won, right? So what happens is Cena comes in and interferes, starts beating the shit out of Jey Uso. Then Cookie Rhodes' music hits. Now, here's the thing about Cookie Rhodes, right? For some reason, Cena's music, I don't believe, hit when he interfered, but Cookie's does, right? And he runs out. Michael Cole says, here comes the quarterback. What are you talking about? He lost. He's a losing quarterback. But anyways, he comes out, clears the ring, kinda, right? Logan Paul goes to punch him in the face, misses, gets speared, gets Uso splashed. As Michael Cole says, frog splash! And then Uso wins. Then Cookie gets the mic. There's probably about 10 seconds left, so he quickly blurts out what's happening. He says, I have a brother in Jey Uso, and you've got a partner in Logan Paul, so it's going to be us four at Money in the Bank. So that means a couple of things. Number one, don't expect to see Cody Rhodes wrestle until then, obviously. That goes without saying, which is unacceptable because I believe Money in the Bank is, it must be in June. I feel like it's in July usually, but it must be in June because they're already advertising it. But it's I don't know when it is, but it's not anytime soon, right? It's probably like mid-June because like they haven't even qualified the correct amount of people for the matches yet, right? Now, a lot of people might be excited about this, and there is something to be excited about because fundamentally it is a match including both champions, right? Any match that involves multiple champions has an inherent element of desirability, might we say, right? But in this case, it doesn't, because in this case, the champions are who they are. And this also means, almost certainly, I mean, they've done different things in the past, but this almost certainly means that there's no titles on the line. So that means a couple of things. Number one, Cena and Cody, that feud's going to continue. And then we've got Uso and Logan. That feud's going to continue. At some point, you can expect Orton to come back and turn on Cody. I don't know how that's going to go down. I don't see Cody Rhodes at this point dethroning Cena. It would just be very stupid, right? It's like if Cody Rhodes, like after Money in the Bank, dethrones Cena, then it's like, what the fuck, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, he dethroned Cena. Fantastic. Now we're back to Cody Rhodes. It's as if the Cena run never happened, right? So Cody Rhodes needs to fail a few times. Then he can take it later, I don't know, at SummerSlam or who the fuck cares, right? But I do feel like Cookie Rhodes needs to have the Randy Orton feud before he reinserts himself legitimately into the title picture, But that's another time, another discussion, I should say, for another time, because I got more to say about the world title. Anyways, right? Another thing that I didn't like about this is who the fuck is Cody Rhodes to just show up there and make a match? You know what I mean? What if Cena says, I don't want to, kiss my white 17-time world championship ass? What if he says that, right? That's kind of his whole shtick, but the match is happening irrespective of what Cena may or may not want. Another thing is that Cena has indirectly, at least, arguably directly, disrespected Logan Paul. He basically said that Logan Paul is kind of like a shit champion if he were to be a champion, so this would ruin wrestling. So if I'm Logan Paul, I'd be a little offended. I'd be like, wait a second, bro. You're saying that if I become the world champion, this is like a move towards ruining wrestling? That doesn't seem to be something that Logan Paul or anybody, for that matter, would be okay with. Lastly, Logan Paul, just conceptually speaking, right? If he were, and I don't mean Logan Paul, but anybody who tag teams with Cena right now, has to be on board with Cena's plan to ruin wrestling. Otherwise, everybody in the company, from Tozawa all the way to like who's the biggest heel in the company right now, let's just say Seth Rollins, like all these guys, especially Seth Rollins, because his entire thing is he wants to save wrestling, right? That might be the most logical feud. Rollins versus Cena. Rollins is saying he wants to save wrestling. Cena wants to ruin wrestling. But they're both heels. It's kind of interesting, actually. But even the biggest heel right now should be against Cena. Like, Cena's the biggest heel in the company, but aside from Cena, everybody should be against them. Cena should have no friends, Like, Logan Paul gets nothing by tag teaming with Cena, other than he has to perform in a match that's not for a title, and he might get his hands on Jey Uso. But given that he's been getting his hands on Jey Uso for several weeks in a row, I don't see why this would appeal to Logan Paul, right? Again, I think the only way someone should align with Cena is if they are aligned with Cena's views that wrestling should be ruined. And if they're not, then they should be like, I'm not teaming up with this guy. I don't agree with this fundamental logic. If I help him win, I'm helping ruin wrestling, and I don't want to do that. And I just want to say one other thing about Logan Paul. A lot of people in the arena were booing Logan Paul, which is fine, he's a heel. But then they started chants of, fuck you, Logan, which I'm perfectly fine with. I don't care. The hater's not a sensitive guy. I could give a shit. But I will say this, it seems to be that a lot of people have completely never given Logan Paul a chance after the incident many, many years ago where he found a hanged body in the suicide forest nearby Tokyo, Japan, right? By Mount Fuji, for those that don't know. Now, obviously, this is something in bad taste, right? Obviously, if you see a dead body and you think to yourself, I'm going to put it on YouTube, you might be a little retarded. And I'm not above saying that Logan Paul, I don't think he's the brightest guy. I think he's very well aligned with branding and marketing and YouTubing, but I don't think he's an intellectual. And I think a lot of things that would be common sense to people that are properly socialized, he doesn't get for whatever reason. However, this was a long ass time ago. And quite frankly, it's honestly a little bit weird that people are still hung up on it. Now, maybe some people dislike him for whatever, that crypto situation. I don't even know much about it, right? There might be other reasons to dislike him, but the reason that I see cited the most often is that he did that thing in Japan once. All right, that's not good. But how fucking long does this guy have to pay for it? It's been 10 years, motherfuckers. Or thereabouts. It's been at least, I think he went to Japan before I did. I went to Japan like 6, 7 years ago. So it's thereabouts, right? So it's like he was a fucking kid back then. He did dumb shit, but I'll tell you this, motherfuckers. A lot of people do dumb shit when they're kids. The hater and his fiance were having this discussion about, I forget who it was, but it was somebody who fucked up big time. Oh, it was someone that I know, one of my friends. Well, not really one of my friends, but someone that I know. He, in my opinion, made several mistakes when he was younger, right? I mean, maybe he doesn't even think of him as mistakes, but he made several choices that have consequences to this day, right? Nothing criminal or anything like that, but things that I'm sure he would have done differently, right? Now, he did these things when he was in his 20s. The hater made many, many mistakes in my early to mid 20s, right? Luckily, I've come out on the other side of them, like largely for the most part. I've suffered the consequences, but I've gotten through them, right? And they don't hang over my head for the most part. You know what I mean? But some people, they make mistakes that do hang over their head, given who they are and given the mistake. But it doesn't mean it should hang over your head, right? One thing that I never understood about contemporary American society is this complete lack of empathy and complete lack of the ability to forgive. Like people forgive like the unforgivable, in their personal lives. But you can't forgive like a dumbass, like 23-year-old kid who thought that finding a dead body was cool and he wanted to show it, right? It's not a good look. And I'm not making excuses based on his age at the time. Like at 23, you should know better than that, no doubt about it. But if you don't, it shouldn't fucking, dictate the rest of your life, right? And it's the same kind of thing with, let's say, Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair. They didn't make any mistakes, but there's this random hate for them that doesn't seem to make any sense. It's like, why are people booing Bianca Belair? They loved her until yesterday, right? Same thing with Charlotte Flair. Like, why are they booing her? There has to be a logic behind it. And if it has anything to do with their personal lives or anything like that, that's just fucking weird, to be honest, right? Because Logan Paul, the guy, the real person called Logan Paul, plays a character in WWE that happens to be called Logan Paul. They're not the same person, dumb fucks. Just like John Cena's real name might be John Cena, he plays a character called John Cena. You know what I mean? It's the same thing for Randy Orton, everybody, right? They play characters. So you should be able to judge them on their character alone. It's the same thing. People are like, oh, Hulk Hogan's a racist. You know what I mean? Even if he were, like the character of Hulk Hogan is not a racist, right? So you booing the actor who plays Hulk Hogan is a little bit weird, right? It would be like, for example, let's say you're watching, I don't know, like Rush Hour, one of the haters' favorite movies, right? That movie is produced by Miramax, which is the production company of one Harvey Weinstein, right? Chris Tucker, as I understand, has also been on the Epstein jet several times, right? Now, irrespective of what Chris Tucker and Weinstein may do in their personal lives, right? The characters in the movie are not Chris Tucker, right? He plays I forget his name, James something. How does it go? Because he has a scene where he's like, James, whatever, FBI, right? That one, right? Like that character, the character of James, I forget his last name, I should know it. Carter, James Carter. Because I just remember Jackie Chan going, Carter! Yeah. So like the character of James Carter is what makes me laugh, right? He's played by Chris Tucker, but I don't give a shit, right? It's the same thing. It's a character, motherfuckers. So people should be able to separate the art from the artist. Now, if you think Logan Paul sucks for other reasons, be my guest, right? Now, I don't give a shit. I don't even care if people boo Logan Paul or not. But I do want to take an opportunity to remind people of the importance of forgiveness and empathy, right? Oftentimes, if not every time, you will get judged for the worst thing that you do. And that can have consequences on people's lives, right? Economically, in terms of your work, in terms of those that will and will not want to associate with you. And then to have people pile on that as if they've never made a mistake, right? I ask yourselves like a dumbass. I ask all y'all, have you ever made a mistake in your 20s that nobody knows about? Or that because you're a complete nobody cares about? That if you were a celebrity, people would be like, fuck this guy, right? The hater has made many mistakes, right? And like, it is what it is. I take responsibility for them. I apologize for them to society and the people that I may or may have not wronged. It's usually just society, in my case. But the point is, we're supposed to grow and learn from our mistakes. And we can't grow and learn from our mistakes when somebody just keeps throwing it in our face, right? It's as simple as that, I'm not trying to get sappy here, but I do get the feeling that Logan Paul is not being booed because he's a good character worker. He's being booed because people fundamentally have a problem with him, right? And I never understood that. Even the most heinous of acts, right? If you're able to entertain me, I don't care if you're a terrible person, right? I am not taking my social cues from Logan Paul or Vince McMahon or Triple H or Kevin Nash or Scott Hall or Booker T or anybody, right? They might all be pieces of shit in the real world. I've never met Booker T. I think he'd be a nice guy, but if he says, get the fuck away from me, you piece of shit, I'd be like, oh, all right, well, fuck Booker T, right? This doesn't mean that I all of a sudden now personally hate the character of King Booker. The character is still awesome. You see what I'm saying? And that's kind of the idea. It's important that we judge people based on what we're supposed to be judging them on, right? They're being presented to us in a certain way for a reason. Now, if you want to go deep and judge them on other things, be my guest. That's on you, motherfucks. That's on you. But in my opinion, if you do that, you're not going to enjoy the show as much. Now, granted, there's not much to enjoy anyways, but there you have it. That's been the haters' little mini rant, cucks. That being said, this event, I can comfortably say that every segment was a solid 0 out of 10. Nothing was enjoyable. The John Cena R-Truth match shouldn't have happened, right? Nothing came from this. I guess the only solace you can find from that match, and therefore from this entire event, is that the people of Tampa, who by the way started saying, thank you, Cena, afterwards, these people had an opportunity to see John Cena perform live. I'm sure many of them, it was their first time, and obviously it was probably their last time. So with that being said, that's kind of cool for them, but I wasn't there, cucks. I've seen Cena perform many times, and I don't give a shit. So that being said, that can't be enough to give this show anything other than a 0. So 0 out of 10 it is. Kiss my ass, and go get some sleep, because tomorrow actually is a long weekend. Stay up all night, motherfuckers. Maybe the hater will do a stream. I don't know. I just thought of that right now. Well, we'll see. I think I have to download WWE 2K again because I deleted that shit from my PS5 for space constraints. But we'll see. All right, cuts. Take care. Go fuck your mothers.